Hey, what is up, guys? How is it going? My name is StevieWunderKid, and we are back with another Fast and Furious car replica build. In this video, we're going to be recreating the 1950 Chevy Fleetline that was owned by Dom's cousin Fernando at the start of the Fate of the Furious. This was the car that Dom basically commandeered before it went off to the wreckers, and he used it in a race against Raldo, another street racer, and basically he went through a lot. Nitrous winning with the car in reverse while on fire. Crazy scene, but he won the race for his cousin, which was awesome. But yeah, now that we actually have the brand new Classique Broadway in GTA 5, it's going to be pretty easy for us to recreate this car. We don't have to use the Hustler or the Hermes. This is probably the closest you're going to get. So the new Classique Broadway you can pick up from the legendary Motorsports website for $925,000. And yeah, we're in LS Customs now, and I'm just going to show you everything you need to recreate this car. So first of all, you guys probably have noticed the hood and the doors are missing. That's obviously for the sake of recreating the car as it appeared in the movie. Dom gutted a bunch of parts off of it, and you can do that, but you have to do it manually, unfortunately. But anyway, we're in LS Customs now, so I'm going to quick fix it up so we can go through everything you'll need to apply in here before we take it outside and remove those parts. So performance stuff, that's pretty much up to you. So first off, in bodywork here, we're going to go with the Oh My Hot Rod. This is basically going to get rid of the front bumper as well as the fenders there on the sides. Obviously, don't do the hot rod with the trim because we're trying to minimize the amount of chrome on this build. So do the Oh My Hot Rod and you should be ready to rock. For brakes, that's up to you. For the bumpers here, in the front, we're going to remove the front bumper. In reality, you can only see the crash bars on the front of the car in the movie. So to stick as close as possible to that aesthetic, we're going to remove the front bumper. And then in the rear here, I chose the bumper bars. In reality, you could just either leave it stock or do the bumper bars. I chose the bars here because I think it looks a little bit more bare bones. I wish there was an option to remove it because the car in the movie actually didn't have a rear bumper. It was thrown off, obviously, for weight reduction purposes. But yeah, either stock or bumper bars is going to be the best bet here. Next up, for the engine, that's up to you. And then in the exhaust here, I just left it stock. In reality, the car actually had a turbo, which was really cool. And that had a dump pipe just like right behind the fender there, or right behind the front wheel. Unfortunately, you cannot get that here in GTA, so I just left the exhaust stock. Probably think that's the best match you're going to get there. Next up, for the fenders here, we are going to leave the fender stock. We're not going to do any fender covers for the rear there. Just leave them stock so that way you can see the full wheel. So that's all handled. For the hood up front, I actually left the stock hood. And the reasoning behind this is you could go with like these superchargers here, but I think it just adds way too much. The car in the movie had a turbocharger, so adding a supercharger I think would look not fully accurate. So yeah, you could do one of these superchargers if you wanted to, and that would fully get rid of that hood. I just think it goes way too high and it adds way too much onto the engine. So I actually went the route of just leaving the hood stock and then manually removing it myself. But yeah, you could leave this hood stock and do that method that I indicated, or again, you could run one of these superchargers. Because I think it's a bit overkill, I chose to leave it off. Horn, that's up to you. For the lights, obviously, since the car doesn't have headlights anymore, we're going to leave those stock, and then this car didn't have neons either, so we leave those off. Next up, for the livery, I chose the Barn Find livery. Now, the reasoning behind this is because this has the lesser amount of rust. The other two options here are the Junkyard Classique and the Beaten Hot Rod. Obviously, the Beaten Hot Rod has the flames, so we don't want to run those, but the Junkyard Classique adds a bit more rust than the Barn Find does, and it's a little bit more patchy. So I think in order to kind of preserve as much of the original color as possible and have a little bit less rust and a little bit less like damage on the car, the Barn Find is the way to go. It's a little cleaner, which I think is what we want to go with. So yeah, Barn Find livery there. For the mirrors here, in reality, the car in the movie actually didn't have any mirrors. I presume that Dom probably ripped those off for weight reduction too. So for this, I went with the most discreet set of mirrors that I could. So the stock mirrors I think are a little bit too big. Any other option here I think is a little bit too much. So I went with the bullet mirrors because they're really small and they're really close to the pillars, so they're not as easily seen. I think that's probably the best match you're going to get there without obviously being able to remove them. Next up, for the plate, for this, we went with the blue on white 3 plate. This was to give it the most bare bones plate to make it look kind of like a Cuban plate. And if you want to recreate the plate number, it is P016GA1. If you wanted to recreate the number on the plate there, you could do that as well. But yeah, blue on white 3 I think is the best match for being the most like basic plate you can get. Next up, for the respray, this is actually a pretty interesting respray. Now, on first glance, you might be considering running a matte color, and I would love if there was a matte that worked, but unfortunately there isn't. I think the closest, if you wanted to go with the matte and you wanted to just bite the bullet and accept the fact that the color is a little bit different, you could run the light gray in the matte section, obviously, and this is going to really flatten the texture. Obviously, it's matte, so I think it looks a little bit better with the rusty livery if you wanted to do that. But in my opinion, I think this shade of gray is a little too dark. So to preserve the correct shade of the color, I actually went into the metallic section and I chose a metallic bluish silver. You guys might be like, why the hell did you do that? Well, the reason is it's a metallic, and if you choose a classic bluish silver, it has an odd amount of shine. As you can see there, it really shines up the paint, and obviously we're trying to get it as flat as possible to make it look a little bit more rusty and ratty. So we're gonna have to go into the metallic and kind of do it ourselves. So metallic bluish silver here for the primary as well as the secondary, as you guys can see, metallic bluish silver. And then for the pearlescent, in order to mute that shine so it's not as overly bright, you're going to go down and add a black pearlescent. I know that was really elaborate, but I think that's probably the best match. You still kind of get a little bit of a glossy texture over it, obviously because it's not matte, so it doesn't work the best with this livery, but in my opinion the shade of the color itself is really close to the car in the movie, so that's what I chose. So metallic bluish silver with a black pearlescent to mute that shine should get you looking pretty close. Either that, or if you wanted to bite the bullet and go with a little bit of a darker shade, you could go with a matte light gray. So that's all handled. I know that was a lot, but hopefully that was understandable. Next up for the roof accessories here, we're gonna run none. There was no swamp cooler or anything like that on his build. Next up, we're gonna go to suspension, and for this I chose the sport suspension. If you look at the car in the movie, it is tucking quite a bit of tire. I think the competition is slightly too low to the ground, so to preserve a little bit of that classic look and to not make the car look too low, I think the sport suspension is the way to go. It's a little bit lower, you have a little bit of tuck there in the rear fender, but it's not like crazy slammed like the race suspension or something like that. So yeah, that's the suspension handled. Transmission, that's up to you. Turbo, that's up to you. For the visors here, I chose to run no visors. Pretty simple, there weren't any visors on the car in the movie. Next up for the wheels, I think there's kind of one major good match for this. So for wheel type, we're going to head into the good old muscle category. We're going to go into stock rims so we can paint these, and I chose the Kraka rims, as you guys can see here. I think the style of the spokes themselves is really close to the style of the rims on the car in the movie. Although the center caps are a bit off, I think the actual styling of the spokes themselves and just the way the rims look in general look as close as possible to the rims that were on the car in the movie. So the Kraka rims in the muscles category I think is by far your best match. And then for the color, there's not really a lot that we can do for this, so we're gonna kind of grasp at straws here, and I actually chose the straw brown for this. Now the reasoning behind this is that it kind of preserves a little bit of the alloy look, but it makes it look a little darker as if it were colored by the rust. In reality, the car in the movie had chrome rims that were covered in rust, so to kind of get close to that shade of the kind of rusted chrome, I think the straw brown is definitely the best match. You can see that the shading of these rims with this color applied is pretty close to how it looks in some pictures of the car, so that's why I chose the straw brown here. I think is probably the best match you're gonna get. Not the perfect match, but it's the best that we can do here in GTA. Next up for tires here, for tire design, we're gonna leave them stock. Tire enhancements, that's up to you. You could throw low grips on and drift this thing if you wanted to. That's exactly what I did. And then tire smoke, just leave it the default white. And then finally for the window tints, we're going to leave off the window tints for this build. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're gonna head out of the mod shop now and quickly take those parts off so that way you can see kind of the car in its final form, so you can understand kind of my vision with this thing. But yeah, so first off, going to vehicles, we're going to go down to the doors, we're going to pop them all open, and let's start taking parts off. All right, so got the door there, we got one door down. We're going to do another one right now on this corner. Oh, the door's glitching out. What is going on with this door, man? I can't figure it out. Okay, the hood's off. Okay. And then we'll get the door. There we go. The door's off. So that's all the parts we need to remove. Get out of my way. And then we will close the trunk. And that's about it. So yeah, let's take a look at this final form of this totally destroyed car. But yeah, you guys can see here pretty closely. You guys could probably see now why I chose not to run the supercharger up top there. I think just without it, it looks way cleaner. Basically, the entirety of the front end removed. And then the doors as well as the hood. Don't pay attention to them back there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this build. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Enjoy the Classique Broadway. It's definitely something different for GTA 5, and it's a fun car, and it does drift pretty well too, so enjoy it while you can. Hopefully this build helped you guys. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting my content, and I will see you in the next video.